Another week has gone by on the Dragonflight Alpha, and we have the talents finally available for my favorite class ever. Paladin, since the early days of me in World of Warcraft, have always drawn me in, but the Retribution spec has had its fair ups and downs. This week we got a new talent tree for Ret especially, and it is looking amazing. It has a lot of really cool stuff from the older days, and I'm just looking forward to seeing how it plays out. So we're going to do another leveling challenge here with the goals of mostly just testing how Retribution plays from the ground up. Now last week we did this with the two-handed enhancement shaman. It was a nomad leveling challenge, and the focus on exploration and seeing how the world felt and everything like that was secondary to seeing how two-handed enhancement shaman played with the new talents. It was a resounding success, and I really encourage everyone to check that out, especially if you're interested in seeing two-handed enhancement shaman. But this week we're taking everything to the next level. In that playthrough it was really fun and engaging, but it really wasn't a challenge. Two-handed enhance was actually like really good. So this time we're going to try to ratchet everything up to 11. We're going right to the top and skipping everything in between and going right to the hardest possible challenge you could ever do in modern World of Warcraft, the naked leveling challenge. Now I've done two of these before, and the first one was a really big moment in my time with leveling challenges. We did it on an outlaw rogue, and it was one that I started actually before Classic even launched. My goals there were simply to see if I can actually level a character that way, because I felt like if I couldn't, then I probably wouldn't have made it all the way on a 1x Classic, but it really taught me and evolved into something it was never actually expected to be. It provided real difficulty, like challenge that I did not expect to ever find in the open world, and it opened my eyes to the possibilities of leveling challenges and really shaped my opinions of them moving forward. After that, some months later, I did another naked leveling challenge on a mage. So the first character was a melee DPS, and I had this in my head that this was always going to be a certain way, and then I did mage, and it was a much different experience. Obviously, as a pure range DPS, you have a lot more options on how you can survive, but as a melee, you're really just stuck battling every single mob. And that's the goal of the naked leveling challenge, is making every single combat you're in feel meaningful. The way I've described it recently is it's kind of like a mythic plus. The goals are to make it so every single pack that you fight matters. Every single time you're in combat, you have the potential to die if you misplay, and using your CDs well and stuff that your kit has to offer well is going to be absolutely paramount to succeeding. This time we're going to be playing on Alliance as well, whereas the last challenge we did Horde and it was really fun. I'm really interested in seeing some of these quests on Alliance. I've never actually done a lot of these quests, and the whole no gear thing is certainly going to make it a lot more interesting. There's already like a handful of quests in my head that I know are going to be incredibly difficult. But unlike the oft revisited Nomad leveling challenge, this is pretty much no holds barred. Simply level as quickly as we can without any gear on at all. I will have to have a white weapon on, of course, and I will use some basic gear so the character doesn't look ridiculous. But other than that, we will not equip any gear, and very likely we won't gain any actual power-ups from anything outside of gear either. In the past, we used professions and stuff to help offset this, but Paladin is typically one that I expect to be a little bit stronger than your average melee. The hardest possible option here, I think, would be like Arms Warrior. Something that has no actual self-healing whatsoever would be incredibly difficult. But I believe Paladin has the right kit for this type of thing. When we did the Shaman playthrough, I noticed that there was a lot of opportunity to keep myself alive as a Shaman, so even though challenge wasn't necessarily difficult in the first place, any challenge kind of went out the window when we had the availability of Maelstrom stacks to instantly heal ourselves to full with some of those talents. So we'll see how this plays out. I'm going to be keenly aware of this. I'm going to try my best to not actually use healing in combat. At least that's the goal right now. Maybe this will be so difficult that I will end up having to scratch the outer reaches of what the class is possible of. Of course, we know at max level, Paladin has a lot of access to healing as well, so we'll see what the talents do to influence that. We still won't be using any flying mounts or anything like that, but this time we'll be able to use flight paths and hearthstones and quick travel and anything like that that seems relevant. I have a path in my head for what zones I want to do, but I'm still not entirely sure how we're actually going to approach this, because when we did the naked leveling challenge on that rogue, I had a path in my head too, and we ran into a problem that just simply couldn't be circumvented. It took a really long time to get past those quests, and ultimately offered me what I believe to be the hardest actual PvE content that I've ever done in the game. That might sound kind of silly to people, but you know, I've done everything from Mythic Plus to rating at the highest level, and all of those things are really, at the end of the day, group-based difficulty. It wasn't until after I started that they added the Mage Tower, but at the time there was no solo difficulty content in the game, and having to kill elites when you're naked is a whole different level of difficulty, let's put it that way. The thing that was particularly interesting about that challenge was, though, that I had the right amount of kiting and stuns and control in general to be able to outplay pretty much anything. So I knew out of the gate that even though it was incredibly difficult to do this, I had everything I needed to be able to do it, and I just had to learn them and learn what order I needed to use them in. Red Paladin I am much more familiar with, so we'll see how this plays out and what the differences are between the two. I'm actually incredibly eager to see how this plays out because I have dabbled with this spec especially in the past, but I think the talent tree revamp is going to dramatically change their perspective. They have some very, very interesting spells for this concept, much more access to defensive options as well, so it seems like it's going to play in really well. But at the end of the day, it's just going to be enjoyable to play a paladin, especially a human paladin. This character brings a lot of nostalgia to me. This is the first time I fell in love with the class. I've been playing a dwarf warrior as my main for the opening year of Classic, and then I enjoyed playing it, but honestly, I just never really resonated with it. I've always liked helping people, and the healer role has really been one that's been intriguing to me. So Paladin seemed like the next logical step in my journey because I'd already enjoyed Warrior. I liked the whole mail and plate aesthetic that they had in the early days, and I was thinking, let's make it the same, but let's be able to actually heal. So Paladin was obviously the only choice, and I quickly grew to love the aesthetic of both kind of the divine element of the class, but also the down-to-earth, gritty nature of just the melee combat. Retribution in the early days was rough, to say the least, but by now it's fully developed, and I have, frankly, a lot of nostalgia associated with it at this point. So I can't wait. The human lands and that loop there from Elwyn into Westfall into Redridge into Duskwood, that is absolutely going to be featured here. Even after the Cataclysm revamp, which I would largely say made all the zones just less enjoyable to play through, these are still some of the best zones ever featured. And as you might know already, Duskwood has a soft spot in my heart. It'll also be interesting to see exactly when this challenge starts to be difficult. Obviously at level 9, it's not really expected of you to have any stats on your gear. And in the last challenge we did on the two-handed enhanced shaman, there was a noticeable jump in difficulty at times that we then kind of circumvented by getting certain talents. I'm actually predicting that that's probably going to be the exact same way it is on this challenge. You see, I feel like Blizzard kind of just nerfed leveling all around here by adding the talents. At one point, leveling was something that was like slightly balanced around how the power came, and now that you're getting just way more power every single level, that power creep starts to become really noticeable. So whether that'll be offset by the fact that we actually have no gear on is going to be a very interesting thing to see. At the end of the day, man, I'm just excited to see and hear the sounds of using Exorcism again on a Paladin. We also get to test out some of the new UI changes as well with this build, which honestly are really nice. They added a grid option, and they finally allowed you to have it so the bars don't always have to be showing. So I think they're making big improvements every build so far with the UI thing. It's just one step in what I'm calling the next era of WoW coming with Dragonflight. This is truly setting the stage for just a massive difference in the way we play and perceive World of Warcraft. And the fact that it's going to be something that will be present from the ground up is so exciting and encouraging. I just can't wait to get at it.
Have a good one.
But here we are, level 10. We have our first look at the talents on this character, and let's see what we got in front of us. One of the really cool things about going Ret in general is that you immediately get Templar's Verdict. If we did ever do a leveling challenge where we only use class talents only, this really helps make that possible for Paladin. Like you see, it's not even a talent. It's just something you get for free when you pick Retribution. We already talked a lot about the Paladin talents, but the things I'm most looking forward to are going to come in the Ret tree. Having things like Shield of Vengeance early is going to be really attractive, but this is the number one right here. I really like this spell, and I hope it'll be good for 5-mans as well, because I love the concept that Red is seemingly going to be this more like sweeping AoE spec all of a sudden, and things like this that are focusing more on Consecrate and AoE damage in general are going to be really attractive. They're going to be pretty hard to balance too, because they're not really going to be very useful for this playthrough, but I'm such a stickler for the feel of things that I'm probably going to end up adding an additional layer of difficulty to myself just by taking spells that aren't really optimal for this. Getting Wake of Ashes early, getting things like the option to choose these types of talents as well is just really interesting. Path of Ruin is a very interesting concept to me if you guys haven't seen it. It basically changes Wake of Ashes from a CD that generates holy power to a more usable spell that actually consumes holy power as an AoE. Paladin also has some of the coolest war mode talents as well for leveling, so we're looking forward to checking that out and just seeing exactly what we have and what we need for this class to be able to do this without any gear on at all. So as always, guys, this is episode 1 of a pretty long playthrough. All of those episodes will be in a playlist down below, and they'll all be unlisted, so you can just watch them whenever you'd like. If you're watching this again, we already have multiple episodes in that playlist, but I'll continue to add them as time goes. If you didn't see the previous one, we do have an upper limit on how high we can actually level these characters, just because of how the alpha is playing out right now. But this one I'm really interested in seeing the actual difficulty of. It'll be a much different feel. So I hope you'll join me on this journey through the human lands and the difficulty of playing a melee in a no gear naked challenge, seeing what that looks like for Ret, and seeing how these talents actually interact with that. So make sure you check it out in the comments down below. There'll be the list for the playlist. All the episodes that we have there are there. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we will see you guys in the next one.